We knew what was happening. We knew corruption was reigning supreme inside of these facilities. Now we have the evidence. ICE detention officer guilty of sexually abusing a detainee. Here's the update.
An ICE agent in Louisiana has pled guilty to repeatedly sexually assaulting a Nicaraguan detainee in a Louisiana detention center. His name is David Courvelle, and he worked in the South Louisiana ICE Processing Center. And from January through July of last year, he repeatedly sexually assaulted this woman. And the way he got away with it was by forcing her into a janitor closet. Prosecutors said Courvelle forced other detainees to act as lookouts while he abused this woman. And part of the way he would coerce her into doing these things, apart from fear, was using pictures of her daughter as some kind of bargaining chip. It's absolutely vile. Now that he's pled guilty, Courvelle faces up to 15 years in prison, and he will be sentenced on April 10th of this year. Some outlets have tried to paint this as some kind of romantic relationship. That implies consent. There is no consent when you are being held prisoner and a prison guard forces you in a closet and says, "Oh, I'll get you pictures of your daughter we took you away from if you have sex with me." Use your heads.
Put up the picture full mass. David Courvelle, a former detention officer at the South Louisiana ICE Processing Center, pled guilty Monday, December 29th. This was a federal court in Lafayette to one count of abuse of a ward individual in federal custody. Courvelle entered the guilty plea before the U.S. District Judge as part of a plea agreement with prosecutors. The charge carries a maximum sentence of up to 15 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000. Even though he has pled guilty, I believe the fix is in, and I'm going to explain why in just a moment. According to court records, Courvelle worked as a contract detention officer at the facility, which is operated by the GEO Group, Inc. We've talked about them on a previous show. Between January 1 and July 30th, the facility houses women and detainees at various gender identities. Prosecutors said Courvelle began abusing the detainee identified by the initial CH, who was being held on an immigration matter. Between May and July, Courvelle had sexual contact with the detainee multiple times while she was under his custodial and supervisory authority. According to the court documents, prosecutors said the encounters took place inside the detention center, including in a janitorial closet. He was able to plead guilty to one count. That means that the prosecutors are allowing him to plead guilty to the bare minimum of what he has done. He's not pleading guilty to the multiple times, which would be another count of the sexual abuse. The fix is in. In addition to that, we've covered this same group, the GEO group, on Indisputable. And in covering this group, we have talked about how multiple individuals have reached out to local law enforcement citing the same behavior of these contract workers who are working in these ICE detention facilities. And the local police decided to not investigate and to forward the complaint back to the private organization that has no police authority in order to internally investigate what can only be a criminal matter. The fix is in. There's more. Assistant U.S. Attorney Thomas Johnson said Courvelle arranged for other detainees to act as lookouts during the encounters. That's another charge. Should be. On July 16th, the detention center staff saw Courvelle and the detainee exiting a janitorial closet, prompting what? What did they do? Well, they transferred him to prompting a transfer to another housing unit. Transferred her to another housing unit. Prosecutors also allege Courvelle smuggled gifts such as food, jewelry, letters, and pictures of the woman's daughter into the facility. Courvelle resigned July 30th, was able to resign July 30th. Not fired, not arrested, resigned July 30th after learning investigators had obtained recordings of phone conversations between him and the detainee. During a September interview with ICE, the Office of Inspector, Courvelle initially denied the relationship before later admitting it. Prosecutor said obstruction of justice. All of these are chargeable offenses, violation of oath. All of these are chargeable offenses. Why would an individual who has decided to sexually assault, sexually exploit a human being, they have trafficked illegal contraband into the facility, they have co-opted and coerced other detainees to become their lookout, that's called co-conspiracy, or perhaps something even worse. Why is this individual, who is a private contract, allowed to plead to one count of sexual assault? ICE agents arrested for crimes across the nation. Let's get to it. Investigators said one immigration enforcement official got away with physically assaulting his girlfriend for years. Another admitted he repeatedly sexually abused a woman while in his custody. A third is charged with taking bribes to remove detention officers on people targeted for deportation. At least 24 U.S. immigration and customs enforcement employees and contractors have been charged with crimes since 2020. And their documented wrongdoing includes patterns of physical abuse, patterns of sexual abuse, patterns of corruption, and other abuses of authority, such as taking bribes. A review of the Associated Press found. The Trump administration has emboldened these agents by arguing they have, quote, absolute immunity. Now, this is a lie. This is a lie, but I will explain that on the other side of this. So they believe they have absolute immunity for their actions on duty and by weakening oversight. One judge recently suggested that ICE was developing a, quote, troubling culture of lawlessness, while experts have questioned whether job applicants are getting enough vetting and training. Of course not. Quote, once a person is hired, brought on, goes through the training, and they are not the right person, it is difficult to get rid of them, and there will be a price to be paid later down the road by everyone, said Gil Kurlakowski, who served as the commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection 2014 to 2017, has been an outspoken person about this matter. So where are we? The culture is transforming. Well, that's by design. How did this happen? Once again, 80% of some of the installations of ICE, they are not lifers. These individuals are brand new. They have replaced the individuals who served in the capacity of federal agents for ICE and went through the proper training and protocol to do so. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Well, number one, they did it under the disguise of Doge. That's how it happened. That's how it happened. Why did it happen? Because that was the reason. They wanted to have a different culture. The whole dynamic of the culture is changing was intentional, not a product unintentional. It was part of the design of what they were attempting to do. Do you remember when they either gave workers who worked in intelligence and in law enforcement, federal law enforcement, you can either take this buyout or you get fired? Remember that? That was under Doge. It was to transform the culture. There's more. Almost every law enforcement agency contends with bad employees and crimes related to domestic violence and substance abuse. This is longstanding. But ICE's rapid growth and mission to deport millions are unprecedented. And the AP review found that the immense power that officers exercise over vulnerable populations can lead to abuses. Some of the most serious crimes were committed by veteran ICE employees and supervisors rather than the rookies. So you thought that was bad until you hear about this. Here it is.
A U.S. Customs and Border Protection officer is now facing federal criminal charges over allegations that he was harboring an undocumented immigrant who also happened to be his girlfriend. That is according to a new criminal complaint by the Justice Department that alleges that Andres Wilkinson, a CBP officer and supervisor, was living in Laredo, Texas with a woman who had overstayed her U.S. visa and was in the country illegally. The criminal complaint alleges that he provided her financial support, including housing, credit cards, and access to a vehicle. It even says that the two traveled together through Border Patrol checkpoints along the Texas border. The Justice Department is alleging that Wilkinson was, quote, aware of her unlawful immigration status, yet maintained a romantic relationship with her. According to the complaint, the Justice Department also collected information indicating that the woman is actually Wilkinson's niece. We contacted an attorney listed as Wilkinson's lawyer and have yet to hear back. If convicted, according to the Justice Department, Wilkinson could face up to 10 years in federal prison.
The allegation says he's sleeping with his niece. That's what the allegation says from the government. The same government that would prefer to protect individuals like this until it's just too much and it's not, well, it can't be defended. Truthfully, none of it can be. The man is sleeping with his niece, according to the report. Why? Because of the relaxed oversight, because of the pattern of not holding individuals accountable to a rule of law, because of their willingness to not only hire but retain individuals who are corrupt and have no business being ICE agents at all. Andres Wilkinson, U.S. Custom and Border Protection Supervisor, is facing federal charges over allegations he harbored an immigrant living in the country illegally, according to a news release. Court documents state the immigrant was both his girlfriend and his niece. The woman living in the country illegally was living at Wilkinson's residence in Laredo. The complaint identifies Wilkinson as the woman's boyfriend. Authorities also received research indicating the woman is the daughter of Wilkinson's brother, making her Wilkinson's niece. The woman initially entered the U.S. on a visitor visa in 2023. The complaint alleges and later overstayed authorized travel. Quote, the complaint further alleges that Wilkinson was aware of her unlawful immigration status. The release states, yet maintained a romantic relationship with her. Records show the woman had multiple entries into the U.S. until December 2023, when she began living in the U.S. with her husband at an apartment in Laredo, according to the complaint. The woman's husband petitioned for his wife's legal residence in January 2024. But the case was closed after the husband withdrew the petition in April 2025. In May 2025, the office observed Wilkinson meeting with the woman and her daughter, who was a minor, according to the complaint. From June through November 2025, law enforcement conducted surveillance at Wilkinson's residence and observed the woman living there with her daughter, according to the complaint. Investigators also noted the woman used vehicles registered to Wilkinson. Investigators detained and interviewed the woman on the 5th of February, 2026. According to the complaint, the woman told investigators she had been living with her uncle, Wilkinson, since August 2024. The woman said Wilkinson financially supported her with housing, credit cards, and assistance with financial obligations, the complaint states. The woman also said Wilkinson was aware that she was consulting with an immigration attorney to resolve her immigration status. The woman told investigators she crossed U.S. Border Patrol checkpoints in a vehicle driven by Wilkinson at least twice. The complaint also alleges the two traveled to San Antonio together, August 2025. If convicted, Wilkinson faces up to 10 years in federal prison and a fine not to exceed $250,000. The release did not state his current employment status with CBP. Harboring for the reason of exploitation and personal gain. That's what that's about. Okay? You know, there was a time in this nation many decades ago when a black person walking around like they had freedom was a crime. And individuals who had the resources and the privilege would harbor them, our allies. Harboring for the sake of personal gain and exploitation is not decent. And look at how much emphasis, how many resources the federal government dedicated to investigate this, and the lack of resources they will utilize to investigate a murder when one of their own do it. All right. Senator thoughts.
I mean, it's just some sick stuff, Doc. All of the cases are sick. This last one in particular.
Yeah.
You know, the man, was he aware that this was his niece, or he acting
Yes.
like he was oblivious to the fact?
He was aware.
But just did not care. You know, when you were talking, I wrote down culture, consciousness, and corruption.
Mm.
The culture, the consciousness, and the corruption that is flowing through ICE and Border Patrol right now being exaggerated, exacerbated by the Trump administration. And the way that these officers are allowed, and in some ways, Doc, encouraged to comport themselves. Because if you're not going to change it, you're encouraging this behavior. You're saying that this behavior is okay. And that is a problem. And when you have a judge that states developing a troubling culture of violence, I mean, it's beyond developing as far as I'm concerned. They already have, and the judge is right, don't get me wrong, but they have established a troubling culture of violence and exploitation that must be addressed. And it doesn't seem like it's going to be addressed in this administration. So the next administration needs to be in the ready. They're going to have a whole bunch of stuff to clean up. But this is insane. And anybody that believes in the rule of law, because that's the other side, they say that ad nauseum. Anybody that believes in the rule of law should look at this kind of behavior and say that it is unbecoming and it is unacceptable and not with our tax dollars.
Very well said. Very well said. We will bring updates as they come. Obviously, there's more to document.